All right, here's that preview that we teased so much in the other video. Here it is.
Big preview.
Big time.
What are the keys heading into Game 2 for this Cleveland Cavaliers team? Alex, let's start with you. What is it going to take? What type of adjustments do they need to make in order to head back to Cleveland with the series tied up?
Well, they say at this time of the year you got to go with what got you here, and that's LeBron James. I know he had a team high in shots, but 16 is a really low number for him, especially in the playoffs. He's got to take the game over. He didn't seem to want to do that in Game 1. He seemed very fine being passive in the offense, giving the ball off. Seemed like every big possession he was just kind of standing in the corner, waiting for the ball to him, not making the play to get it in his hands himself. So he's got to be more aggressive. He's got to put himself in the middle of it. I'm talking 20, 25, maybe even 30 shots. We know what this team is. Look, we know what this team is without him. We saw it tonight. This team without him can't beat the Celtics. He's got to be the guy, and he seemed to have no interest in doing that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's... Sorry.
No, go ahead, Jimmy.
I was going to say it's definitely not rocket science. You got to keep feeding the ball to LeBron. If he was just gauging, like he says, just gauging how Game 1 went, then he knows that his team is nowhere near good enough to compete without him on his absolute A game. So, that being said, though, aside from LeBron having to step up and do pretty much everything, I do think that we will be seeing more of Tristan Thompson in Game 2.
Yeah, I agree with that.
When he came in off the bench, immediately you could see his effect on the glass. Just a big body in there. I mean, the Celtics have had trouble with those big inside presences in the past. So if Ty Lue wants to make any sort of adjustment and prove that he has any kind of basketball brain up there, he will probably start Thompson in Game 2.
If Ty Lue's the one making that decision.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, my bad. If LeBron decides that he wants to.
That's right. I mean, I feel like when the Cavs got it down to 14, the seeds had been planted for LeBron to go off in that fourth quarter.
Yeah,
but
that
7-0
right
run really devastated the Cavs, I feel like, to start the fourth quarter the way they did, and they just never rallied back from that. However, I agree with you, Jimmy, of course. I do expect them to buckle down defensively. They have to find a way to not let the Celtics get into the paint so easily the way they did in Game 1. Alex, of course, LeBron James, attempting 16 shots. Because this was a blowout, that was the case, but that may not be available for the Cavs in Game 2, whereas I do expect them to take at least over 25.
I think he only had like 7 or 8 at halftime. He didn't have that much. So even when this game was still not in hand, but it was still early, he was taking that passive role. And I mean, this is kind of the story with LeBron, right? And he said it in the postgame. Game 1 is the feeling out process. If that's true, he didn't do much feeling out because he didn't have the ball much. What did he learn just standing in the corner and watching?
Right, and I'm not a Thompson guy. I'm Team Chloe all the way through. I mean, after this whole debacle that's been going on off
He's
the
such
court.
a bad guy, that cheater.
Yeah. So I'm Team Chloe. So it's not like I'm pushing for Thompson to play. But I will say the Celtics had 60 points in the paint in Game 1, and that was something that Ty Lue pretty much said, like, that's awful. I don't know exactly what word he used, but he was pretty beside himself over the fact that the Celtics got 60 points in the paint. So they do need that inside presence that he can provide. Now, what about the Celtics? What can they do differently? Because Brad Stevens said it himself, we need to play much better in Game 2. Believe it or not. I mean, shocker, right, to hear Brad say something like that.
He always says that.
Is there something that stands out to you that they could do differently or better in Game 2?
So not necessarily different, but adjust. Brad Stevens, although he didn't get a vote for Coach of the Year, we all know is one of the, if not the elite coach in this game. And you're going to have some close games in the series. Close games are won and lost at halftime in the timeouts. When the Cavs are going to change things up. They're not going to come out with the same game plan. When they come up with something new, if it starts working, how quickly can Brad Stevens and his team adjust to it, adapt to it, and figure out the way to solve it? It's not so much about going into Game 2 doing something different off the bat, but they do have to be able to quickly adjust to what the Cavaliers' changes are, because if they let the Cavs get a little bit of momentum, I mean, we know what that looks like. We've seen that story before.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who the Celtics start. Are they going to start Baines if they see Thompson starting? You know what I mean? Is it going to be a game of cat and mouse from right from the start, or is Brad going to stick with the starting lineup and make the adjustments once he sees how things kind of shake out? But I think the Celtics, they don't need to. They're not obviously in any sort of panic mode. I'm sure Brad will find a few things that they can do better, but I think you just stick to what you know right now. And right now, the Celtics, to me, I was watching the game, and they're just playing with a lot of swagger right now.
Yeah.
I mean, when Jaylen Brown is playing, like, he's never going to miss a shot again. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of vibe you get when he's got the ball in his hands. Same with Tatum. I mean, I got Tatum's out there lining guys up like he's James Harden. You know, he's just trying to cross people up. And so, I mean, I just think...
Heard a lot of oohs and ahs from the crowd.
That shot in J.R. Smith's face was something else.
Yeah, I just think the start is really important for the Celtics to just keep that foot on the gas, keep your foot on the Cavs' throat, and get that confidence. And actually, I asked Marcus Smart after the game about this. I was like, how nice was it in Game 1 to get that win? Because the Celtics have been worked by the Cavs in the playoffs the last couple of years. Marcus Smart's been there for it all, and he said it was huge to have these young guys see. Because sometimes seeing is believing. You know, when you get a win like that, it wasn't just like a grinded out win. Like, this was a win that they knew everything that they were doing well, and they just continued to do it. So to have that win under your belts, I think that's going to be huge for them in Game 2.
Well, one last key I want to add for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think we're going to see a lot more shooting from from Korver and J.R. Smith. Believe it or not, they only attempted 5 3-pointers, which I think is very unlike them.
Yeah, good point.
I expect both of them to put up a lot more shots, especially Kyle Korver. We know what they're able to do, what they're capable of. You know, there was one game that sticks out, you know, throughout the postseason was when they combined for 10 threes, you know, against the Raptors early in the series. Yep. I think we may see maybe not that many 3-pointers, but we'll certainly see that many attempts from those two
and
shooters.
LeBron even mentioned it post-game, how important the 3-point shot is for their team and how poorly they shot it. Yeah, so
doesn't matter if they're not landing, though.
We'll see how it all comes out. We'll see what kind of adjustments from the Cavaliers, the adjustments from the Celtics, of course, in Game 2, and we got you here covered like we always do. CLNS Media from TD Garden. Tuesday night, Game 2, this best-of-7 series between the Celtics and the Cavs.